The claim that industrial carbon pricing and environmental packaging rules are the main causes of food inflation in Canada has become common in political debate. It suggests that climate and environmental policies are directly responsible for rising grocery bills. A closer look at the evidence shows that this framing does not hold up when food inflation is broken down into its actual drivers. It is not true that industrial carbon pricing and environmental packaging rules are the main causes of food inflation in Canada. Federal data and independent economic analysis consistently show that these policies have, at most, minor and indirect effects on food prices. The dominant drivers of food inflation have been global commodity prices, energy and fuel costs, supply chain disruptions, labor costs, exchange rate movements, and the structure of Canada's grocery retail sector. Industrial carbon pricing in Canada applies primarily to large industrial emitters through output-based pricing systems that are specifically designed to limit cost pass-through to consumers and to protect competitiveness. Multiple analyses show that the impact of this system on consumer prices, including food, is negligible. Where any pass-through exists, it represents only a very small fraction of overall food price changes and is overwhelmed by other cost pressures such as fuel volatility, fertilizer prices, and global input costs. Food inflation trends do not track changes in industrial carbon pricing rates, which indicates that industrial carbon pricing is not a dominant or causal driver of rising grocery prices. Environmental packaging rules, including recyclability requirements and extended producer responsibility programs, can create incremental compliance costs for producers and retailers. However, authoritative inflation breakdowns do not identify packaging regulations as a significant driver of food inflation. Packaging costs make up a small share of total food prices, and any increases linked to these rules are marginal compared to transportation, energy, labor, and wholesale input costs. No credible national study concludes that environmental packaging rules are a primary contributor to Canada's recent food price increases. Food inflation in Canada has been driven mainly by global spikes in energy, fertilizer, and agricultural commodity prices following pandemic-related disruptions and geopolitical shocks. Higher transportation and logistics costs, particularly in fuel-intensive supply chains, have played a major role. Labor shortages and wage pressures across agriculture, food processing, and retail have added further cost pressure. Exchange rate movements have increased the cost of imported food and inputs. In addition, high market concentration in grocery retail has affected how costs are transmitted to consumers and how margins are managed. Together, these factors explain the vast majority of observed food price increases. Carbon pricing and environmental rules are highly visible and politically salient policies, which makes them easy targets in affordability debates. Their impacts are often conflated with overall inflation, even though evidence shows they account for only a small share of food price changes. This framing simplifies a complex economic phenomenon into a single policy narrative that is not supported by empirical data. Industrial carbon pricing and environmental packaging rules are not the main causes of food inflation in Canada. Their impact on food prices is minor and marginal. Food price increases have been driven overwhelmingly by global market forces, energy and transportation costs, labor pressures, exchange rates, and the structure of the grocery sector. Claims to the contrary rely more on political messaging than on economic evidence. The Canadian Climate Institute analysis explains why industrial carbon pricing systems are designed to protect consumers and why their cost impact on households is negligible, providing direct evidence on limited price pass-through. Environment and Climate Change Canada documentation outlines how industrial carbon pricing works in practice, including output-based pricing systems that reduce impacts on consumer prices. Budget 2024 materials from the Government of Canada provide official inflation and cost of living analysis, showing the broader drivers of food prices beyond environmental policy. Policy Options and the Institute for Research on Public Policy synthesize independent economic research demonstrating that carbon pricing is not responsible for Canada's affordability challenges. Viewers can pause here to view the full citations and follow links to the source material. For more fact-based content about Canadian politics, democratic health, economic trends, and rhetorical analysis, the Facts for Canadians platforms offer ongoing resources and educational material. These outlets aim to strengthen public understanding, improve media literacy, and support evidence-based democratic engagement.